Hey, what's up, masters or master entrepreneurs? We are live with Robert and Kay Lee Fukui. I think I said it right. Last name.
Fukui. That's okay.
Oh my God.
Fukui.
We just talked about this too. How's it going,
It's all the pressure once the lights come on, all the pressure.
It's a dangerous last name.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you're trying not to say it the wrong way, and then you say it the wrong way.
That's right. It's taught me grace, right? I have to have grace for people because.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys are here with me today, and we appreciate you taking the time to do this. You guys are the co-founders of F61, a business consulting company. You also assist married entrepreneurs to create better work-life balance by structuring the business to scale while giving precious time for the owners to invest in their marriage. My wife and I are business partners as well, and as I was saying earlier, she should probably be up here with me, but that's not happening today. So we appreciate you guys being here, man. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you, Dave, for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And for some of our listeners, just to kind of let you guys know, this is the first episode we're doing under our new branding, which is the Persistent Entrepreneur. So excited for that. And we have the married entrepreneurs on this episode. So, man, I think it's a good fit. I really think it's a good fit.
Yeah, great name, Persistent, because that's what it takes, right?
It's pretty much for your marriage and your business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You're not kidding. I do want to bring this up though. I know we were supposed to record last week, and you guys had to cancel because of the fires. You guys are out in the LA area, so how are you guys doing with that?
Yes, please keep us in our prayers. We were supposed to record last week, like literally 5 minutes before we were going to get on our call with you. We were in our condo and the fire alarm goes off and it's blaring through the whole complex. And Robert's like, oh my gosh, we got this podcast we're supposed to get on. And so then he emails you really quickly as we're trying to run out the door with the dog in tow to find out what's going on.
So fortunately we were far away from the fires. We're at that point, probably about 5 miles away, but I didn't think we had fires in our building, but we thought because the smoke and the ash was so thick. I mean, we could smell it in our unit here. So that's when we were already kind of thinking about leaving anyway because the smoke and ash was so thick. But when the fire alarm rang, I just thought that the smoke set it off. Well, what happened was our garbage truck that was taking out our bin, the forks hit the water sprinkler, the fire sprinkler pipe, busted the water all over the garage, and so that's what set off the alarm. Oh, wow. But it just said, okay, well, we're probably going to be without water and there's all kinds of stuff going on. Let's leave. So we left for a couple of days down to San Diego, but we're fortunate. Thank you for asking. Our home is fine. We're far enough away from the zone, but literally 3 miles north of us, it's a disaster. I mean, we have so many friends in church and friends that we just know from the neighborhood that moved up there. The whole community's leveled off.
Think about what you said. It's 5 miles away, and I'm obviously I'm on the other side of the country, but as I have seen some of the coverage, like that fire just spread so fast. Mm-hmm. It covered thousands of miles, right?
Yeah, not thousands of miles, but thousands of acres. I mean, we're up to about just this fire here is about 14,000 acres got burned. And that's smaller compared to the Palisades next to Malibu. That's the big one right now, over 20,000. Right. But yeah, it was just the winds were so bad the night before. It was up to like 90-mile-an-hour winds. That's what fueled the fire, and just things just spread like it fast. People just literally had to leave with the shirt on their back, literally. I mean, like I said, we have friends where people are just giving clothes and just the basic necessities, and it's tragic what we've seen because there's businesses and churches that we just know of that are just no longer there. And
then people can't go back. If you're in a fire zone, they can't go back to their home or business. We have clients that can't go back and open up their business because the power's not on, the gas isn't on. So they're staying in a hotel until they can get their business back up and running again. So it's really devastating. So we've just been talking, privately and even with our church, but privately too, like, how do we help? How do we support? We know people, unfortunately, we know so many people and even business, and how do we, not just for the short term, but the long term, because this is a long-term issue that's going to be addressed. And so how do we deal with that, or how do we help? So anyways, thanks, and keep us in your prayers.
Yeah. Well, I think, based on the conversation we're talking about too, right? Persisting. I mean, I can't imagine, for me, overall health is number one in my family. Number one. I mean, those two things top priority, but I still couldn't imagine going out and my house being gone. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and as you said, people lost their businesses, their livelihood, all their possessions. That's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So it's really starts to help you refocus or reframe like what's really important. I mean, literally, like as we're packing up, even though we knew our house wasn't in immediate danger, I knew we're just packing up really quick, right? Like what's important. So it really makes you think like what would he carry with you? Unfortunately, you know, number one, just like you, but us, you know, our dog, but us, husband and wife, we have the kids, obviously get the kids out. You know, those are the things that are most important. Those are the first things you think of, right? And in business, when we're doing the grind of business, a lot of times that can shift a little bit towards the most important thing seems to be our business. At least that's how by how we spend our time, our focus, even when we're home, we'll keep thinking about it, right? And we start getting so all consumed with business, it starts to overshadow the things that are most important until stuff hits the fan, and then you got to reframe, right? And so, you know, for us and clients and just, you know, again, it just helps you reframe again, what's really important in our lives and how do we make sure we keep those priorities the priority and not let business, even as we want a successful business, but let's make sure that we don't lose the things that are most important, which to me are our relationships.
Amen to that. Yeah. Well, I definitely want to get into the into the conversation we had planned. I just have to ask, so I mean, as you guys were leaving, I mean, I know you said you were 5 miles away, but in your mind, there must have been some fear or concern that, you know, the fire would make it to your property. So how, in that moment, how were you guys feeling and how were you handling that as you're getting your kids, your stuff, you know? I'm just kind of curious to get your thoughts on that.
I don't know. It was pretty intense, especially the smoke. I mean, thank the Lord, like we said, our place was fine, but the smoke in our unit was so bad that you felt like you were outside just breathing smoky air. And so we're like, oh my gosh, let's just get like the bare bones, like literally open up a suitcase. I threw in a couple of Robert's shirts and some undergarments and myself. Let's pack the dog and go. And I just thought if there's anything we need, we can just buy it. But we just wanted to get out as quickly as we could. And we were kind of just in that survival mode, I guess I would say.
Yeah. And I think there's the logical side and there's a subconscious side. Mm-hmm. The logical side for me said, okay, we're far enough and we have a major freeway that just cuts goes east-west, that cuts the northern end of the city, which is right up against the foothills. And that's where everything was going on, to the south side of Pasadena where we were. So the logical side said, I mean, just the freeway itself acts as a nice break. But subconsciously I was thinking, well, there's a possibility because of our place even catching a fire, because the fires were skipping because the winds are so bad, just carrying some of the burnt, you know, whether it's burnt branches or whatever. The reason why the fires were jumping was because the winds were so fierce that it was carrying burnt embers that were then catching a tree on fire, which then caught a house on fire. So there was the outside possibility of that happening. So that was in the back of my mind. That's why I grabbed my hard drive, which I learned a while back. I don't have the big hard drive anymore. I just had the little portable one. So everything's on there. So I just unplugged and went right laptops and went. And then with the clothes and then us. So I did have that in the back of my mind. That's why I grabbed the hard drives. Otherwise, I probably would have left it. Thinking if I really felt we were safe, 100%, I would have left it. But the back of my mind was thinking, well, what if, right? Because we already kind of see it or heard what was going on. And for us too, as we're leaving, I think for me, feeling the sadness of leaving because of the situation, and then also knowing we had friends up in that area. And I already, just as we're seeing the basic coverage and I just do the basic geography of the city, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, what's going to happen when we come back? Our hope might be safe, but I'm sure we may know of people that lost it all.
And you feel so hopeless because there's nothing you can do to help your friends and your community at the moment with the fires going.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad things are definitely, I guess, calming down, for lack of better. I know the fires have kind of, the only reason I know much about is obviously like a lot of people just watching the news or watching 60 Minutes. I saw 60 Minutes was showing some pretty graphic stuff. I almost looked like hell in a lot of ways. Like, but anyway, yeah. So just grateful that that's ending, and now the cleanup starts over there. So glad you guys are safe, and glad you're here with me today. So appreciate you sharing some of that. Let's talk about being married entrepreneurs. Talk to us about the marriedentrepreneur.co. That's your is that your company, or is that your book?
So that's just the domain name. I mean, the company name is I-61, as you shared earlier, and we developed a program for married entrepreneurs called Power Couples by Design. So the married entrepreneur is more from an SEO reason.
Okay, got it. All right.
And it was easier and shorter than Power Couples by Design. So, but anyways, so our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, that's where all our resources are to help married business owners do life and business better. As you know, and I shared earlier, business can be all consuming sometimes, that the relationships take a back seat. And sometimes we say, it's just temporary while we start up or get over this hump. But inevitably, as we were starting to work with clients, even before we were doing this, just when we're just working with our business clients anyway, I mean, some of them were in business already over 20 years, and they were still in the grind, and they could never shut it off. They didn't have any boundaries between work and home. And we're both products of that. Kay Lee coming from an entrepreneurial household, and I came from a ministry house, so my dad was a pastor, but running a church and running a business are very similar, and the demands are very similar. And so in my house, the ministry sometimes became the center, got the center of attention, and the family sometimes took a back seat.
Yeah, in my house, the business became the mistress, and I'm a third generation entrepreneur family. So a lot of times the go-to was, let's just put more time into work. If we needed more money, things weren't working, whatever, more time. And, I got 3 siblings. We're all strong-willed children. So I also think my dad maybe wanted to get out of the house. What I mean? It was too much for us as the kids, I think, at times. But it was really challenging on my family, because growing up to this day, I don't think my dad made it to my high school graduation, because he was always working 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we started our, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can relate. My wife and I we own a real estate brokerage, so there's always a lot of moving pieces. Now, I just kind of shut it down. Like, I tell my clients, hey, after 6:30, you're just not going to be able to. You'll get me the next day, or so Sundays, very rarely are you going to get me on a Sunday after like 2:00, right? But my wife's the opposite. She'll take a call at 8:39 at night. She'll be sending emails. And so sometimes we have differences on that. Like, I try not to let it bother me anymore, but we're really, really different from that perspective. So I'm just kind of curious, do you guys have things like that you've kind of worked through? And there's 2 reasons I'm asking that question. One is because I want to kind of get your perspective on that. And then second, I know sometimes, my wife and I being working together, sometimes we talk work, and it's fine, because that's what we have in common. We're focused on the same things. So I think it's a good thing in a lot of ways that we're talking work, but sometimes do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
All too well.
Yeah, it happens in every married entrepreneur household, right? Sometimes business becomes a topic of conversation because it is something we have in common. And sometimes we don't know what else to talk about. It's more comfortable to talk about business sometimes than it is to talk about our feelings, right? Or, what's going on? How are you doing? How can I help, support? So a lot of times business is easier to talk about, and it can get all consuming, which can be the danger, right? Because if business is front and center, then where's our relationship? And that's when relationships start to split, because there's no more connection. If business is the only connection, there's no actually real emotional connection in a relationship, because it's all business, right? There's no emotional connection with business. I mean, it can sound emotional sometimes, can get upset or happy or whatever, but the reality is, to have a intimate relationship one-on-one, it has to be deeper than just work. And so how to create those boundaries, is kind of what you're getting at. And those are some things we have to work through, because again, it wasn't exhibited at home growing up. So we had to set our own boundaries. It's kind of similar to you, after 6:00, we don't take any calls or texts. I keep the phone in the office, that kind of stuff. We establish boundaries so we're not on 24/7. And then at the dinner table, once we get to the dinner table, it's no more business talk. Of course, we often slip. So one of us, we have to hold each other accountable on that. So that happens. So we're not perfect, but we become consistent on making sure we kind of set the boundary between business and home. And what people don't realize, even though you enjoy what you do, like we enjoy what we do, but it's very unhealthy to keep doing business when you should be disconnected. Because one is the mind, body, soul, and spirit has to disconnect from work to refresh and re-engage so that you have the energy to have more clarity when you do work. Right. So there's the relational side, but there's also a lot of physiological and mental and emotional research that shows the need to disconnect from work so that your mind, body, soul, and spirit can actually refresh itself and re-energize itself. So you're actually more effective when you do work, so you can get more done in a shorter period of time. Right. Because we go through when you get to the end of the work week, you just become mentally fatigued. Right. So which means you are less productive on Thursday and Friday than you are on Mondays and Tuesdays. So if you were better rested throughout the week, so that Thursday and Friday, you're almost as productive as Monday and Tuesday, or at least as productive as Wednesday, then you would actually get more done in actually shorter period of work time. So we can go deep as you want on this, but that's why, we make the excuse as entrepreneurs, we got to work, we got to respond, we got to do this, we got to do that. And then the lines get blurred between home and business. And then that's not healthy for a relationship. It's also not healthy for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Give us a couple tips on how do you guys disconnect? Like, how do you disconnect it? Because I know for us, it's definitely, I don't want to say it's like we do date night. We're supposed to do date night every week. We do at least once a month. We'll do date night. So we disconnect. We do shut our phones off at the table. But I'd say the majority of the time, though, we are kind of into work. So how do you guys disconnect?
Well, I'll give you a tip on what we do that we are intentional about, and it seems to help a lot. We have on Mondays at 3:30 actually, we have our meetings. So we get together, we sync up our calendars for the whole week. Like, is Robert going to be out of town? Is he going to be working a lot? If he's going to be out of town, then when's he going to be back? And then when are we going to be able to do some fun stuff to reconnect together? Because I need to know what the expectations are. If I think, oh my gosh, he's going to be gone, or I find out the last minute he's going to be gone for a week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he didn't tell me this. I can't believe he didn't tell me. I'm upset because I didn't know. And then we also sit down and we talk about our business. What are we talk about our goals? Like, are we hitting our goals? Are we going in the right direction? Are we saying yes to the right things? Where are we at financially? And then we also give each other an encouraging word, which goes a long ways, you guys, because I love words of encouragement. And just being able to sit down and know that I'm going to get one once a week for sure.
I give more than that, people.
That was a nice dig. So let me ask you this: is like, do you have that like time blocked in a calendar together where like every week you're like, okay, this is the time, 3:00 we meet, no matter what else is going on. Talk to us about that.
That's what I was getting at. Instead of just thinking about how do we disconnect, is how do we prioritize the things that are most important first. So just talk about time blocking this in your calendar. Where do we put our priorities first? So all our relational priorities should go in the calendar first, and then you backfill business. How we normally do it, right, is put all our business stuff, our to-dos on the calendar, and then we squeeze our life into it. So first thing in the morning is our time. I got my own alone time. I read, I pray and meditate, and then we pray together. That's the first thing we do in the morning. And then I take the dog for a walk. I have my smoothie, and then I get started for the day business wise, right? So there's first thing in the morning is how do we give our best to each other first thing in the morning? What's our daily check-ins, maybe around lunchtime or something, and then of course dinner. And then once we hit dinner time, I do make sure we disconnect and I don't try to do any work. I'll probably be like your wife. go back when she goes to bed. I do kind of sneak back and check some emails.
Sneak back.
So I gotta be honest with that. But I want to make sure that number one, I don't work too long, right? I have boundary on that. Because otherwise, again, I want to make sure I get a certain amount of sleep, right? At least 7.5 hours. And so that's important because then I can wake up and still be refreshed. So even though you might sprinkle in work at the end, but first of all, the priorities were done first, right? And then I backfilled those email time, whatever is whenever after the priorities were done. And then I have to make sure that I was properly rested so I can start the day with good energy. And then, yeah, whether it's date night, for a while, Kay Lee was actually putting on date night specific restaurants or things to do. And so actually when she did that, it was kind of funny because I was like, it actually made it, instead of date night was like a chore, like a thing on the calendar to do. It actually was something to really look forward to because like, ooh, that restaurant's great. Or, that thing is cool. I was like, so it framed date night into something I was really looking forward to when there's something specific attached to it. So even what we're talking about, how we time block our calendars, we put specific things to that. Even days of the week, when I block certain days of the week, there's certain tasks that I want to do on those days. And so anyways, yeah, those things are very helpful when you put on the calendar, and it's after a little while, it becomes not just a routine, it becomes really fun and life-giving, right? It should be life-giving when you're hanging out with each other. And our prayer time actually has been very life-giving and almost comical. Because what happens is,
I got to say this, honey, you do give me words of affirmation more than once a week.
And I pray over you every morning.
Yes.
So, but I have my chair, right? And then, so what happens is when it's prayer time, Kay Lee squeezes in this chair. It's a little oversized one-person chair.
Because he says, I said, I'm going to come over, and he says, you won't fit. So as soon as he says that, I got to get myself in there.
And of course, the dog has to hop on because she's got to be with us anyway. And so what we found after a few days, it was that the dog would respond to amen. She would bark. When we said amen, she would bark and jump off and grab a toy because I would play with her after that. And so after it happened a few times, I'm looking, I'm like, does she know the word or is she just responding because we're done with the prayer? So the next day we were praying. As we're in the prayer, we said, in Jesus' name. And then the dog stood up and was looking at us and looking at us back and forth and waiting for amen.
Because she knew you were messing with her.
And she didn't respond till after we did say amen. So, but she knew the run up, right, was in Jesus' name. And she just got up and she was waiting for that last word. Awesome. So anyways, all to say is what became almost like routines, it became fun and very life-giving because you're spending time with each other and you're just speaking over each other. And then that just sets the tone for the day, the week, to be so energized to get a lot done in a shorter period of time.
Hey, I wrote down, I made on my notes. It's I love the specific because it's in my calendar. Every Friday we supposed to have date lunch, and every week we we'll do it next week. But I think putting a specific place in there will make it happen. And then same thing with the date night. I love that. And the good news is we just found a new babysitter 2 weeks ago, so that's a huge plus. Because we lost our babysitter, so we have two kids, 11 and 7. So that's awesome. Question though, you mentioned multiple times, life giving. What do you mean by life giving? Explain that.
So that's the emotional side, right? There's what we do and spending time with each other, date nights, yeah. But like, what is really life giving? Meaning, what fills up your emotional tank in a sense, and what really energizes you. Right. And so even in business, like business owners spend so much time on busy work, or we call it in the business activities, right? You might have heard that term, right? Yeah, on the business versus in the business. In the business, all that busy work, all the things that have to be done, but shouldn't necessarily be done by you, or it doesn't really move the business forward. So the on the business activities that the business owner should be focused on are usually those 2 to 3 things that not only are you great at, but are life-giving, the thing that you would do nonstop forever, right? So what are those 3 things in that business that if you spent 70% of your time just on that, one, how far would that move the business forward? Because not only are you good at what you do, but it really brings life to you, right? It's just that emotional lift that you just enjoy it, And so life giving is just, that emotional side of, what you do, whether spending time with each other or even in business, is how do we spend more of that time, whether it's at home or at work, in those life-giving activities that really just fills you up.
Was there a moment, like, I'm just curious, was there like a moment in your relationship that, maybe it was, you said we got to change, and then that's how this kind of came into place, or was it just all like this? I mean,
no, for me,
No.
For me, it was, as I was working in corporate, I was working for a pharmaceutical company in sales, and on the side, I was developing the consulting business. And so what happens was, I'm working all day for my employer, right? And then in the evenings after dinner was when I would start working the consulting business. So I would be working till there was almost like work creep, as the days, the months, and almost a year or two went by. Next thing you know, it was 2 a.m. by the time I went to bed, every night for the week. So by the time Friday hits, I'm just exhausted. And then I'm even on Saturdays, after I take the dog for the walk in the morning, I just want to go back and take a nap. So even though I had a boundary, so to speak, not working on weekends, but I was so exhausted mentally and emotionally that I just wasn't present for Kay Lee. I'd be there, we go out and do stuff, but I just wasn't there. And so it got to the point, I'm just sitting at this desk and I'm like, man, something's got to give. Like, this isn't healthy. Kay Lee was being gracious. She knew, okay, this is a season. We're starting up. You got to pour stuff into it. But once I leave the corporation, then she'd have her husband back. But even in that moment, even she was being gracious about that, and I felt it was just for a period of time. But even I said, I don't think this is the right way to do it, even in this moment of startup phase. I said, yes, I do have to work in the evenings, but what if I just got to bed by 11 instead of 2? What does it take to get to bed by 11 instead of 2 o'clock? So that's when I started looking through, what are the tasks that I'm doing, and how much of it is that important that I need to do it right now or today or tonight, whatever, and started to really focus more of my energy into the things that would really grow and drive the business. And so sure enough, I was able to kind of whittle it down to 11 o'clock, get to bed by 11. So that's 3 hours a night times 5. That's 15 hours a week. That's 2 nights of sleep, right? so that changed. And so I just have to make sure, okay, when I do leave the company, I want to make sure I don't backfill my evening with keep working, because I'm so used to working the evenings or day through evening that I had to be, hold myself accountable, even have, help, and Kay Lee helped as well, is making sure once I'm just in a business full time, I don't still work morning till evening, because I'm already trained and conditioned to do that. So yeah, it was that realization that, hey, this isn't healthy for our relationship. It's also not healthy for me. I'm just tired and exhausted, and I'm not going to be at my best even for my employer as well as for the consulting business. So all that together was like, okay, how do we do this better? And then as we notice, our clients, business clients, were experiencing the same thing, but they didn't have 2 jobs they're working, right? They just had the 1 job, but they're still working morning till evenings and not having a life. And so that's when we started to kind of formalize, add this piece of stuff that we've realized that wasn't healthy for us individually and as a couple. How do we do it better? And then how do we help our clients do it? So that's why we added the kind of work-life balance piece into the consulting that we were already doing for the businesses.
Cool. Kay Lee, I'd love to get your thoughts on that question as well.
It was challenging. I think looking back at the time, I told myself I could do it for a season and it'd be okay. But to be honest, it was challenging because I liked hanging out with my husband. But, as soon as he would go sit in his chair, I knew it was going to happen. He would fall asleep because he was exhausted. And I remember I could tell how he was doing. I would look at his eyes, and I could tell in his eyes how tired he was and to see where he's at emotionally. And it was tough. And I think it also kind of brought back memories of childhood, with my dad working so much and just giving it his all, being perseverant.
Yeah, I remember, a few months after I left the company and was just doing consulting full time, we're at a chamber event or some mixer or something like that, and people that we know. I remember one guy that I know pretty well, he comes up to me and is like, "Oh, you look much better." And he didn't know what changed, the transition changed. And then a number of people kept saying that, like, "Oh, you look so great now." And I'm like, "I look that bad?" I was like, "Wow." I was like, "Wow, what did I look like before?" Jeez, I didn't realize how it took a toll, even physically, on me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, now you guys have a book. It's the Married Guide for Greater Work-Life Balance. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's called Tandem, the Married Entrepreneur's
Yeah.
Guide for Greater Work-Life Balance. Yeah, it's
Okay,
tandem.
cool.
So it's got a picture of a tandem bike on it. Yeah.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, it's how do you do business and marriage well? So it's book is kind of split in half. It's almost like part marriage coaching and part business consulting wrapped up in one book. But we know you can't separate one from the other, right? Your business life is part of your life, and your married life is part of your life. It's all gonna creep in. But how do you just do it in a more healthy way? I think is the key thing. Is how do you build this business? How do you focus on the right things to have more margin of time and money? And then how do you create the right boundaries? How do you work better as a team, so you can have a very fulfilled life as you're moving forward?
Yeah. Is there, it's funny. I'm sure there's a lot of people that think, well, if you spend that much time in your relationship, your business is probably going to struggle a little bit, right? Do you guys get that? Is there a sacrifice to your business, or can you have both thriving?
You can actually have both thriving, because actually when your relationship's thriving, you have more energy in the business. Like when things are going well at home, it sucks at work too. But sometimes you take it off on your employees or customers, so it's not good. The other thing is we overestimate how much time we're talking about on spending in your marriage. People think we got to spend all this time to build a healthy marriage. The reality is no. It's just cutting out the time wasters and have more intentional time with your spouse and your kids. Like if we always talk about with our clients, like no matter how busy life can get, what's the non-negotiables you want to establish in your marriage and your family? What does quality time look like, right? It's not quantity of time, it's quality of time. So even our prayer time in the morning, if that's all we could do for 2 months while we had a busy stretch, we're still connected, because it's very life-giving when you pray over your spouse and you're speaking blessing and positivity and encouragement. Because think about it, how many times in a day and a week do we really do that? Just speak encouragement over our spouse. We really don't. It's not just me.
Right? Once a week, right?
Yeah, but it's every morning now, right? At least once at least once a day. But think about it, right? And so even John and Julie Gottman, which are renowned marriage and family therapists, they say 5 minutes of intentional time with your spouse is life-giving, and it'll help you create a healthy marriage, even if stuff is going haywire outside.
And I say be intentional. Put the phone down and give your family member, your loved one, your undevoted attention. You can do it, you guys. You know what I mean? It's not going to be as hard as you think it is. I mean, you might go through withdrawals, but you can put it down and just look them in the eye and ask how they're doing, and see what they say.
Yeah. So the first thing, I talked about, we already waste more time anyway than we realize, even at home. Like I said, we're so all consumed at work. So when we come home, we tend to have to respond to emails and texts and all that. But how many of those things are really emergencies versus what we're conditioned to do? We're just conditioned to respond right away. That's right? Before we had cell phones, right? Everything had to wait till we got back to work, to the office the next day or the next work day, right? But now, because of the smartphones and so much connectivity, and when the notifications go off, that's why I turn off my notifications. Because I will respond to those notifications. And I'll look at my phone, and it's nothing I have to respond to, but the fact that I picked it up and looked at it just becomes distracting, and I'm off of flow on what I was doing. So that's just an example of we just got to say no to things. Not everything's an emergency. Only a fraction of 1% is probably an emergency. So the 99% of the things we respond to when we shouldn't be responding to is robbing our time from home. And so the reality is you've got enough time to build a healthy marriage, a healthy family. You just got to understand what to do with that time you have.
And like David says, he doesn't answer the phone after 6. So you probably have taught your clients that, so they know what the expectation is, and then they're okay with it once they know. Then
they just call my wife V. That's all. It's I'm not kidding either. It's anyway. We're kind of a good what's that called? Yin yang, when you kind of fit together there. But yeah, it's funny. I had another question. I forgot what it was now. How much time? Let's talk about that. How much time a day do you guys spend together? Is it an hour? Is it multiple hours? Like, what would you say on average we should invest into spending time together?
So we talk about intentional time, right? Like when we're really just connecting. So there's probably about, I'd say, 90 minutes, the morning time, and then dinner time is our, that's the average, right? That's our connection time. That's when we're talking and sharing and all that. I mean, we spend physically more time together because we work together, but doesn't count as connection time, right? So if you talk about intentional connecting time, it's probably 90 minutes a day. And then, of course,
starting work off during that time, there's like, okay, we're not working, we're focused on you and I, and that's it.
Yeah. And then over the course of the week, because of date night and our weekly meetings, you're probably the daily average probably goes up to, closer to 2 hours a day, when you're counting those things in. But you think about it in the course of a day, 90 minutes, you can find areas where you're already wasting 90 minutes, or at the dinner table, you're not being present because you're distracted, you're checking phone, right? We've seen people at, when we go out to eat at dinner, go out to dinner, where one person's on the phone and then the spouse is just waiting, right? Or someone's just constantly texting, or we've been out with people where they're constantly checking their phone, right? So that distraction, that's not good intentional time. So you're already spending time with each other. All that to say is, how do you just make it count?
It's more about quality than it is about quantity. Like, sometimes I think we just want to be heard. We just want to be asked, how are you really?
Yeah, I remember we were talking to, he's a pretty high-level sports agent out here in SoCal, and he was talking about how he gives each of his kids 5 minutes a day. And then I'm thinking, well, that's not a lot. And then he says, yeah, I give them 5 minutes. I allow 5 minutes. They only give me 3. They just check in. Hey, Dad. Okay, I'm out of here. And so, but the fact that the kids know that Dad's always going to be there every day. What's on your mind? What can we talk about? Right. So it's just intentionality of it, as opposed to how much time. So that's just another example of, it doesn't really take that much time to really build a deep connection with your family.
Yeah, that's a great point. I remembered what I was gonna make a comment about the email thing, and then, which is what I forgot. So the way I look at email is when I'm reading emails, I'm responding to other people's stuff. Like, I'm being controlled by other people's requests and stuff and what they're looking for, as opposed to when I'm not, then I'm in control of my own schedule. So it's kind of always the way I've looked at emails in a lot of ways, because I know as soon as I get into them, then I'm in them, and I'm gonna respond.
It's a black hole.
Yeah. It can be a black hole. The other thing that you said was funny. I remember, I've been doing sales 36 years, and I remember, 36 years ago, you worked, or probably 34 years ago, working for a magazine. There was no mobile phones, right? We went to pay phones to make calls. We didn't have GPS in our car. We had maps.
Thomas guy.
We had the big map. Yeah, that's how we did it, and we all did great. There were no there were fax machines. That's how we got our contracts. There was no email, but yet we all did great. So
we survived.
I don't know how we would do that now, to be honest with you, but we figured it out back then, right? So you kind of reminded me of that, but maybe I'm just dating myself here. Sorry about that.
No, I was the same way. I was, when I was in sales, even pharmaceuticals, payphones was how I checked voicemail and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
And the pager came out. And my mom, she was fancy. She had one of those suitcase, the phones, like the one.
The suitcase.
Yeah, she had one.
That brick she was carrying around.
That was awesome.
Well, and you talk about emails too, because you only check your emails 3 times a day. You're very intentional.
I time block emails
because you could get lost in it, especially with every ping or every email that comes in, because you're just constantly looking for the next one. But yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear from both of you guys. Like, what would you say to someone that's listening to this right now? Maybe they're in this, maybe the relationship's not that great right now, and they're struggling in this area, I'd love to hear from each of you. What advice would you give them?
I would say we see a lot with entrepreneurs, couples. Go have some fun, you guys. Don't be so serious. Don't be working all the time. Put something fun on the calendar, like Robert was saying, maybe there's a restaurant you've been wanting to check out, or maybe there's a fun activity in your neighborhood, or just Google, I do that, what's happening in my area this week for ideas. But just go have fun and play and not be so serious.
Yeah, for me, first thing I'll suggest, two things. First thing I'll suggest is we created a custom landing page for your audience, marriedentrepreneur.co/sales mastery. Go there. There's a free guide for work-life balance that you can work through with your spouse, and hopefully you come up with a plan on how to do business and marriage better. The one piece of advice is just don't accept the status quo. Mm-hmm. I think as entrepreneurs, we kind of feel that once the business, life is what it is. But once the business is productive or successful enough, or we get that first million or the first 10 million or whatever that number is, that home will take care of itself. But the reality is it doesn't. You have to be very intentional about the quality of your relationship. You have to be intentional with your time. So if it's your spouse that's complaining, or even you, I think you feel it already that things aren't great, it could be better. Don't accept the situation that this is how it's going to be, but say, okay, if there's any area in your life you just feel that you want to be better at, do it. Find a solution. As entrepreneurs, we're solution oriented, right? We see a problem in the business or in the marketplace, we're going to find the solution for that. Well, in marriage and relationship and family, same thing. Put that gift to use even at home, is find a solution of having a healthier, thriving marriage, the same way you're putting in finding solutions to build a thriving business.
Well, I love it. I took some great notes. One of my biggest takeaways definitely is the specific. Be specific on what you're going to do. I think that's a game changer. So every week you don't just look at it. Oh yeah, that task again that I'm not doing. I think that'll be a huge game changer. All right. People want to get a copy. Well, you can get the marriedentrepreneur.co guide. I'll drop that in our show notes for you, so you can go there. We'll drop a link so you can get access to that. And how about you guys' book? Is there best way to get their book or get in touch with you guys?
You can access it right off of that same landing page. Yep.
All right, perfect.
Tandem.
And are you guys on social? What's the best way to get in touch with you if someone wants to reach out? Maybe follow you.
If you physically want to talk, again, go to that same landing page, marriedentrepreneur.co/sales mastery, and you can even connect with us on Zoom, schedule a call with us to have a little discovery call or just chat, pick our brain. We're on social, thriving in tandem, both on Instagram and Facebook. More active on Instagram, and then also much more active on Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, just look at us up by our name, Robert Fukui or Kay Lee Fukui.
All right, cool. I love it, man. It was fun. It was fun hanging out with you guys. I feel like
David,
a better husband now after this.
All right, awesome. Give me a report. Give us a report.
Thank you, David.
Give me a referral. I will. Yeah. I will on the next deal. Give us final thoughts, though. Let's give final thoughts for listeners. What's something you want? Like if somebody listened to this, what's the thing each of you want them to walk away with? It. Final thoughts.
I just want to give your listeners encouragement that they can have a happy marriage and a thriving business, that we don't have to sacrifice one for the other.
Amen.
And I'll just give a little business thought, because the business sometimes can be the roadblock to having better time at home. But look for ways to increase your margin of time and money, not just putting more work, more time, more hours, or more sales. A lot of times we're always looking for more, like more volume, right? And when you're trying to get more sales, it's just going to create more work. So if you're already overworked, what's more sales, what's more customers going to do, right? If you don't have the infrastructure to support that without you having to dig in. So I'm always looking for, how do we build more margin on time and money? If you're controlling your pricing, pricing is one area. How do we get more profit margin per transaction, or get a bigger deal per transaction, or more dollars per transaction? And even your time, you're talking about sales. Instead of going for more leads, what if we increase our close rate, right? So that, again, those are little things that can help you grow without putting more time or money into it, right? So think about more margin as opposed to just more volume and time.
That's brilliant. Really want people to get what you just said. And, we were talking about this yesterday as well, with some of our clients, as instead of focusing on selling $400,000 houses, why not focus on $800,000 houses?
Yeah, there you
It's
go.
actually the same amount of work and sometimes
Absolutely.
less work, but you make double the reward. Same energy, same time,
Yep.
double the reward. So yeah, what you
Absolutely.
said is absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate you. Thank you,
Thanks, David.
Robert and Kay Lee. I'll
Thank you,
spare the
David.
last name this time around, but I appreciate you guys being here with me today. It was fun.
Thanks, David. Appreciate you having us on.